Hello and welcome back to Divine Messy Human, the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been a really big and interesting couple of years, really. I have been deepening my work, growing, evolving, changing again. It feels like a constant cycle of death, rebirth, relearning, embodiment, and then shedding the next layers and going again. I know I'm not the only person that this year has especially felt quite tough for. And energetically, I think it's because we are being asked to step up. Now, I've spoken to plenty of people in the industry, and it's really interesting. I think a lot of people assume that because we work in this industry, we're surrounded by these incredible tools that really do help us anchor into the truth of who we are, into our spiritual self, into the energetic world, into the quantum field, into all of that growth and expansion. I think people assume that when we go through the growth and expansion, it is easier. In some ways, that is true. But I'm here to tell you that every time we are leveling up, hard stuff happens. And that hard stuff is really tricky to navigate, even when you have a lot of tools. Now, depending on which part of the brain we are in will depend on how many of our tools we can access. But when we are stuck in that back brain, survival, fear, scarcity, conditioning, stories, distortions, any of those parts, it can be really hard to access that front creative brain, where we can look for ways out of the situation that we're stuck in. And some stories have more juice than others. They're those really deep-seated beliefs, those pieces that feel like they're a bit core to who we are and how we show up in the world. Part of the reason I say this to you is 2 years ago, I narrowed down all of my values to one value and all of my goals to one goal. And those two really settled into my soul and felt really, really right. The value was self-mastery, and the goal was being of divine service to collective consciousness and the oneness, so that we can all be part of that oneness, but bring our unique expression of that to the world. That part has been relatively easy for me to anchor into, for me to live to, work to, etc. If I am not loving enough towards myself or towards others, then I'm not in divine service. And also I have to recognize the human aspect of myself that will make me go into these stories, that will lead me into darker times. And that's okay. That is part of self-mastery. Self-mastery is not about perfection. It is about owning our response to what is happening around us, owning our part in the way things play out, whether they are resourceful or unresourceful. It is owning our responsibility. It is so deep and varied, and it is completely different from what I think most people think it is out there. So when I chose that value of self-mastery, a lot of things fell apart in quite a big way. I was asked to step up in my role as mother and move from doing the mothering to being mum, to just holding space for my beautiful children as they grew and developed and changed and evolved, and to let them know that I was there, holding that space for them, and trusted them to navigate what was best for them. It sounds a lot easier in theory than it was in practice. But I have to say, this last couple of years with me stepping into that, watching them flourish, watching them navigate their lives has been such a heart-burstingly wonderful experience for me as mum, to see them mature and grow and evolve. it has really set my heart on fire, and it's brought me to my knees more than once. Likewise, supporting my partner through his trials and challenges, holding space for him, for his children, as well as obviously for my clients and in that side of things. There has been this level of self-mastery that I thought I'd tapped into before, but I am accessing at a whole new level. Self-mastery for me doesn't go into perfectionism. It doesn't mean I need to be this perfect human being. It gives me permission to be responsible for myself, to recognize when I am acting unresourcefully, and to take responsibility for that and to make amends where I need to. It allows me to be softer and kinder with myself. And part of what really started me on this self-mastery journey, one was putting my hand up, making it my number one value, and realizing that that's what I had been working to for the previous number of years. I thought when I went through the toughness of my divorce and all of the toxicity and abuse that went along with that, that I had navigated some of the deepest, darkest waters of my life. But honoring and acknowledging that self-mastery was my number one leveled up my need for experience. And it wasn't easy. There have been a number of times on the journey where I have been on my knees screaming for God to take me home. And at the same time, having this knowingness that He wasn't going to do that. That it was my job to navigate what I was navigating, to learn to stand in my sovereignty, to hold space for others without trying to fix, without jumping in, without trying to please them, without trying to make them happy. And to stand on my own 2 feet as a guide, a mentor, a partner, a mum, a lover, all those other roles that I take up, a practitioner. And in that journey, whilst I've experienced the deepest, darkest depths of my life, I have also experienced the greatest wonder, awe, happiness, joy, just the most wondrous feelings as well. It's like I've given myself permission to truly experience the full extent of this human experience, whilst learning how to navigate that the best I can with the tools I have at the time. Because let's face it, when we're in the wrong part of the brain, we can't access all of our tools, as I mentioned earlier. It's also, how do I make amends with people when I have done wrong? Because I am human. And self-mastery to me is accepting that humanity within me, accepting that even though I know better, I may not always do better because I might be tired, or I may have lower energy, or I might just be pissed off. Being able to have compassion for myself in those moments is still a work in progress, of course. But that is part of what I am really working on mastering within myself. Self-mastery isn't the end goal. It is a lifelong unpeeling, unveiling, deepening of learning of new lessons. As I was talking about with another practitioner and healer, we are often the last ones to know all of the crappy things about ourselves, because other people can often see it. They can see our projections, they can see our insecurities, they can see what is truly going on. They are on the receiving end of our unresourceful behaviors. And in that, there are lessons for us. Part of self-mastery for me is owning those lessons and deepening my awareness of self to hopefully do better the next time I'm faced with that situation. Self-mastery for me is about standing in deeper love, in deeper connection, in deeper empathy, in deeper softness, and about raising my values and standards for how I want to interact with the world, how I want to navigate that world. It has been a fascinating journey, and it continues to be a fascinating journey. And I invite you guys to come along with me, because I am now stepping out as a self-mastery facilitator, which feels new and exciting and like it's something that I'm growing into. The reason for that change is I've been more than a kinesiologist for years. I've been more than a life coach for years. And I want to be able to highlight and demonstrate the incredible shifts and changes that I can help clients facilitate. Now, I don't have the answers for my clients, not at all, because they have those answers within themselves. The reason I love the word facilitate is it means to render easy. And I love the idea that when we do this work, we do it with as much ease and grace as is possible. Now, sometimes it will feel like pushing shit up a hill. It will feel tumultuous and sticky and devastating and grief-stricken and all of those really hard emotions. But if we keep coming back to center, if we keep coming back to our soul, if we keep coming back to our divine purpose here, and being able to tap into that part of ourself that knows what we are here for, then even in those hard times, we have an anchor to something stronger, to something better, to something more than us. Recognizing that we are all part of the oneness, the God source, the universal wisdom, the collective conscience that keeps this entire universe in harmony is a beautiful place to be. And if we can anchor into that as we release our own unique expression of that collective conscience, this whole world will raise in vibration. When we talk about how hard things can be, one of my mentors talks about aligned bravery. Now, aligned bravery is about listening to those fears within ourselves, listening to the parts of us, those inner children, the ego fears, the conditioning, the limitations, the distortions within us that want to tell us we can't do something or that we should be doing something else. It is acknowledging that part of ourself. It is owning that story. It is letting that part of ourself know that it is safe and we are going to look after it as we jump into the unknown. Aligned bravery is aligning with our heart and soul as we step forward, knowing that this is the path that is meant for us, knowing that this decision, rightly or wrongly, is the one that we need to make in that moment. There have been so many times that I have stepped into that aligned bravery because even though my ego is telling me to be afraid, to be in scarcity, to step back, to hold myself back, to keep myself small, I know I need to keep moving forward. And those moments have sometimes brought me to my knees. Because the fear is so palpable, my body doesn't want to move forward into it because it is completely and utterly the unknown. But we don't grow when we're in certainty. We don't grow when we're standing still. We don't grow without pressure, without challenge, and without problems. People seem to have a problem with the word problem. But what a problem means is to cast forth a question to which I know there is the answer. When we talk about challenges, the origin of that word is challenging someone to a duel. A challenge, people don't get up and walk away from. Somebody dies or something dies. I love the idea of a problem because I love to think that there is always going to be an answer, whether I know it or not, whether I am awake to it or not, whether I am aware of it or not. There will be an answer and it will come. And sometimes, like this answer that I have finally grown into over the last 6 or 8 weeks, those answers aren't always clear as we're moving through the path, but they're not meant to be. Part of it is to challenge ourselves. How much do we want this? Are we truly listening to our inner truth? Are we acting on our inner truth? Are we allowing fear and distortions to get in our way and trip us up or to slow us down? Knowing that whatever path we walk is the right one for us at that time, and that we are exactly where we need to be. There have been multiple times over the last 18 months especially where I've wondered if I'm doing the right thing in terms of career, in terms of parenting, in terms of partnering, in terms of so many aspects of my life. I do not think there has been any area of my life that has remained untouched by this latest growth cycle. And as with the snake who sheds its skin when the skin gets too tight, or the crab who has to take the shell off and regrow a shell, or the butterfly or the caterpillar who goes into the cocoon and basically turns to smush before coming out as a butterfly. Transition, change, transformation is not a painless process. And also, it is a worthy process. Those problems are put there for our growth. Those challenges are set to us for our growth. It is not set to trip us up. It is set so that we can learn how to navigate this world and how we can truly tap into the depths of what's within us to bring it out into the world. The pain, although painful, is a different type of pain. It's like this necessary pain, I guess a little bit like childbirth. It feels like a necessary pain to bring you into a new phase of life, to bring you into a new role, into a new transition, into a new life cycle. And just as in pregnancy, for the last 18 months, I haven't known what I'm giving birth to. I haven't known any of the details. But what I have had is a deep knowingness that I'm on the right path. And self-mastery now is that path. And what I'm doing is I'm inviting clients along for the ride. I am inviting podcast listeners along for the ride. I am inviting people who sign up to my newsletter list along for the ride. The more we can all master ourselves, the more compassion and empathy we can bring into the world. Self-mastery is not about selfishness. It is not about us raping and pillaging the world and going on to try and make the world a less good place. It is about us taking full responsibility for being fully accountable, for being fully self-sovereign, free, abundant, wonderful humans who can bring our heart and soul into the world to serve the greater good. So how are you learning how to master yourself? Start small. Start by tapping into your breath, by becoming present, by getting out into nature, by listening to the birds, to patting your dog, to whatever it is that sets your heart on fire. Try and do something every day that makes you happy, that brings a smile to your face, and that makes you feel expansive, free, and abundant. I'm sending you so much love. Remember, we are all connected to the divine. We are all messy as hell. And the more we can love our divinity and love our messiness, the easier our human existence becomes, and the more masterful of self we can be.